Tonight, the alarming new inflation numbers sending shockwaves through the stock market. The Dow nosediving more than 1,000 points, the worst day for stocks in more than 2 years. The new numbers, inflation soaring a hotter than expected 8.3% in August. It comes just as President Biden celebrates the Inflation Reduction Act. Republicans going on the attack. Also tonight, the stunning counteroffensive, putting Russian forces on the run in eastern Ukraine. New images, Ukrainian troops burning Russian flags after retaking a city near the Russian border. The alleged atrocities the Russians left behind. The Queen's final journey from Scotland to Buckingham Palace, where she's spending one final night. And what the palace just revealed about William and Harry's roles in tomorrow's procession to Westminster, where the Queen will lie in state. The new fallout after the DOJ issues dozens of subpoenas in the January 6th investigation. The passing of a major figure in the Bill Clinton impeachment, Ken Starr. And a twist of fate, how two pilots found out they share much more than a love of flying.
This is NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt.
Good evening, everyone. The direction of the U.S. economy befuddling the experts again and rattling investors in a huge way as the latest consumer price index data finds inflation in August was mostly unchanged, despite the Fed's actions to cool soaring prices. Inflation up 8.3% last month over a year ago. Nowhere was the disappointment expressed more profoundly than on Wall Street, experiencing its worst day in over 2 years. All three major indexes suffering big losses. The Dow off nearly 4%, the S&P down more than 4%, the Nasdaq dropping more than 5%. Wall Street bracing for more interest rate hikes by the Fed after steadily falling gasoline prices have failed to offset the rising costs of other things we buy. Emily Ikeda has our report.
From the price tags in the checkout aisle to the cost of keeping the lights on and even the size of the rent check, new data today showing what so many Americans are feeling. The price of nearly everything is stubbornly high, up 8.3% compared to a year ago, putting more pressure on the Federal Reserve to continue aggressively raising interest rates when it meets next week.
We have more to do, but we're getting there.
The higher-than-expected inflation numbers, unwelcome news for President Biden, who today celebrated the passage of the Inflation Reduction Act.
We had a vision, a plan, and we stuck to it. And the result is we're getting the job done for the American people.
Republicans slamming the White House ceremony today as out of touch.
Democrats' policies are sucker-punching American families every time they set foot in the checkout line.
While the national average for a gallon of gas is now down $1.30 from the all-time high in June, it's still up 16% compared to a year ago. Also soaring, electricity up 15.8%, rent 6.7%, and groceries surging 13.5%, the biggest yearly spike in more than 4 decades. Those rising prices are pushing more people to food banks, like this one in Burlington, New Jersey, where Glenda Wimberly volunteers.
This is a blessing for the community, and it's a big blessing for me.
The 70-year-old isn't just a volunteer. She also relies on the food bank to feed the 3 grandchildren she's raising.
You go in there and spend $50, and you got like 5 things in the cart. You say, what happened to my money? Where's the food?
While average hourly wages are up 5.2%, inflation more than wipes out those gains and is no help to people on a fixed income like Glenda.
It's like a red neon sign flashing that, oh, can't spend that, can't go there, can't do that. It's very difficult.
And Emily, there is growing concern about another looming economic crisis involving America's railways.
Lester, that's right. Nearly 60,000 railroad workers could go on strike if an agreement over pay and scheduling isn't reached by Friday. Such a move would further snarl supply chains and could cause a travel nightmare. Already, Amtrak has preemptively canceled several long-distance routes that operate on freight lines. And, Lester, that could be just the beginning.
Okay. Emily Ikeda, thank you. Tonight, Ukraine's military is pushing on with a stunning counteroffensive that Ukraine says has driven Russian forces from more than 2,000 miles of territory. One Ukrainian official calling it a turning point in the war. Megan Fitzgerald is in Kyiv.
Tonight, Ukraine saying its swift and fast-moving counterattack is taking back even more Russian-held territory. Ukraine releasing this video, saying it shows its soldiers sweeping through a forest after striking this Russian military vehicle. As Ukraine says, they've captured hundreds of Russian soldiers during their sweep past the front line, and the Russians retreat. Ukraine's President Zelensky says his troops have reclaimed more than 2,300 square miles of territory, including the south and the northeast, liberating some 150,000 Ukrainians. Tonight, a top Ukrainian lawmaker telling us this is just a sign of things to come.
This is a turning point and no return point because Russian army is demotivated. This is point number one. Point number two, Russian people are finally asking questions.
In recently liberated towns, there's relief, but there's also anger. This Ukrainian man destroying the Russian flag. And as villages are taken back, just like we saw in Bucha on the outskirts of Kyiv, allegations of horrific war crimes are surfacing again, this time on the outskirts of Kharkiv. I was scared, she said. I can't get the image of the puddles of blood out of my eye. Investigators finding bodies, people shot in the head, and evidence of torture.
Is Kharkiv worse than Bucha?
The region might be worse than Bucha.
While the Russians might have retreated, they still hold significant portions of southern and eastern Ukraine, and they're still on the attack. In Kharkiv, the aftermath of a Russian missile strike overnight.
Megan joining me now. Megan, tonight the White House is weighing in on whether this is in fact a turning point for Ukraine.
Lester, spokesman John Kirby said they would definitely describe this as a momentum shift in the north. It comes as Ukraine is pressuring Western countries for more weapons to keep up the fight. Lester?
Megan Fitzgerald, thanks. Another huge outpouring for Queen Elizabeth. Many thousands paying their respects as her coffin arrived back home to Buckingham Palace. Keir Simmons has late details.
Tonight, the Queen escorted through the gates of Buckingham Palace, something so familiar to her in life. Now, for the last time. Here, for so many decades, she entertained presidents and princes while raising children. Inside, her family gathered to meet her. Her only daughter, Princess Anne, accompanying the Queen from Scotland. The casket driven through London streets, lined with massive crowds, despite the constant rain. Princess Anne saying tonight, "I was fortunate to share the last 24 hours of my dearest mother's life. It's been an honour and a privilege to accompany her on her final journeys." Witnessing the love and respect shown by so many has been both humbling and uplifting. To my mother, the Queen, thank you. And another moment of unity for the new Prince and Princess of Wales, William and Kate, along with Prince Harry and Meghan, after they greeted crowds on Saturday. The palace announcing they will join other members of the royal family tomorrow for a solemn procession. William and Harry, with their father, walking behind the Queen's coffin, just as they did for their mother, Princess Diana, 25 years ago. Meanwhile, earlier today, King Charles cheered by crowds on a visit to Northern Ireland. This region, famous for its troubles, and for that historic moment 10 years ago, when Queen Elizabeth shook hands with former Irish Republican Army commander, Martin McGuinness. Helping usher in a new era of peace with those who fought against British rule. Today, Charles speaking to the Northern Ireland Assembly.
She never ceased to pray for the best of times for this place and its people.
And after those stunning scenes overnight in Scotland, thousands standing in line to say a personal goodbye to the Queen.
She's just been a major part of everyone's life for such a long time.
In London tomorrow, many more expected to wait for hours to see her lying in state and to line the streets again for that procession from Buckingham Palace. It has been at the heart of her long reign. Tonight will be her final night here. 750,000 people are expected to file past the Queen's coffin here in London. But the 4 days may not be enough time. In Scotland, mourners were turned away. Lester?
Keir Simmons, thank you. Back in this country, dozens of new subpoenas have been issued to associates of former President Trump as the Justice Department appears to be stepping up its January 6th investigation. Kelly O'Donnell reports.
New signs the Department of Justice is expanding its investigation around former President Trump, his campaign's efforts to overturn the election, and links to January 6th. About 40 subpoenas have been issued to Trump associates and at least 2 phones seized over the last week. Today, a senior DOJ official addressed this burst of activity.
It is important for us to preserve all relevant evidence in that investigation and any other investigation.
In the separate Mar-a-Lago classified secrets probe, tonight, in a new filing, the DOJ notes the Trump team does not actually assert, much less provide any evidence, that any of the seized records have been declassified. Mr. Trump was back in the D.C. area Monday visiting his Virginia golf property. Among his allies under subpoena, Bernard Kerik, former New York City police commissioner who had been hired to pursue the Trump campaign's claims of election fraud. Kerik said more than 100 people are named in the subpoena.
They're targeting everybody around him.
A Trump spokesman has responded to the dozens of subpoenas, saying the DOJ has cast a blind net to silence and intimidate Republicans, and argues the Department of Justice has been weaponized. Lester?
Kelly O'Donnell, thank you. Ken Starr has died. He was the independent counsel whose investigation uncovered the Monica Lewinsky affair that led to the impeachment of former President Bill Clinton. And he defended President Trump during his first impeachment. Starr's family says he died from complications after surgery. Starr was 76. In 60 seconds, is your Twitter feed vulnerable? Congress hears alarming new security concerns from a whistleblower. We are back now with alarming testimony from a Twitter whistleblower, the company's former head of security, telling senators about safety lapses that he says could put every user at risk. Ali Vitale reports.
Twitter leadership is misleading the public, lawmakers, regulators.
Explosive new testimony about major security concerns inside Twitter.
This enormously influential company was over a decade behind industry security standards.
Twitter's former cybersecurity chief, Peter Mudge Zatko, alleging the tech giant is rife with security flaws and oversights that leave it and its users vulnerable.
When an influential media platform can be compromised by teenagers, thieves, and spies, and the company repeatedly creates security problems on their own, this is a big deal for all of us.
Including potentially,
I love using Twitter.
For some of the lawmakers in today's hearing.
It's not far-fetched to say that an employee inside the company could take over the accounts of all of the senators in this room.
Senators also concerned about foreign actors exploiting security gaps.
Imagine if it's a malicious hacker or a hostile foreign government breaking into the president's Twitter account or sending out false information.
Based on what you heard in there, what's your concern level?
It's very high concern.
Twitter, which fired Zatko earlier this year, said his claims were riddled with inconsistencies and inaccuracies. Today's testimony comes as Twitter's very future hangs in the balance. A judge recently ruling that billionaire Elon Musk can use Zatko's allegations to bolster his case for backing out of his $44 billion deal to buy the social media giant. Still, today, Twitter shareholders voted to approve Musk's purchase, the latest twist in a battle set to culminate in October when the case goes to trial. Lester?
Ali Vitale on Capitol Hill, thank you. Up next for us tonight, human trafficking in this country's marijuana fields, our investigation into just how widespread it's become. We're back now with part 2 of our nightly news exclusive that we first brought you last week. A new UN report finds a staggering 50 million people across the globe living as modern slaves. And in this country, authorities say human trafficking is fueling the rise of marijuana beyond the black market. Jacob Soberoff reports.
In an upscale suburb in Riverside County, California, sheriff's deputies raid a house they suspected of growing illegal marijuana. Inside, they tell us they find thousands of plants and 4 workers from mainland China who they suspect are being trafficked. And deputies say they've raided hundreds of similar grows.
I would estimate that about 90% of them are operated using human trafficking labor.
In our months-long investigation, we spoke with law enforcement in California, Washington State, Oregon, Arizona, New Mexico, Oklahoma, and Colorado, which all report seeing suspected Chinese trafficking victims on illegal black market grows. California's Department of Cannabis Control, the state agency that licenses and regulates pot businesses, confirms to NBC News weed from illegal grows in California is making its way into the legal supply in the state, a process they call inversion, which they say is rare. Trafficked workers we spoke with tell us they were recruited online. Grad student Amy Kim translated a Mandarin language job site for us.
I directly type in dama, like marijuana. Okay, these are from Oklahoma.
Oklahoma?
Yeah. And it says location is good and you can happily earn money. I'll help you with selling.
Oh, wow. We contacted the numbers on the websites we saw, but neither got back to us. Attorney Wang Xiaosheng represents human trafficking victims and says many of these workers are more vulnerable than ever.
Many of these people worked in the restaurant industry and lost their jobs during COVID. They'll take any kind of job that promises good pay, even if they don't know much about it.
In Los Angeles, NBC producer Arnie Hakela and I met one group Wang represents, 7 Chinese workers who said they were desperate for work because they had to pay back the people who got them into the U.S. All ended up finding a job on an illegal grow in New Mexico, where they were trafficked and subsequently arrested on a raid. How many of you owe money to somebody else for either bringing you to the United States or for helping you find work here?
Yeah, they all borrow money.
Our understanding is this is happening a lot. Have you heard examples of other people having the same kind of situation and treatment?
In the beginning, they had never even heard of marijuana, but now having gone through it, they know it's very far-reaching. They know a lot of people who have been cheated the same way they have.
These 7 spoke out about having been trafficked, but law enforcement says the vast majority of others in similar situations won't, making this form of trafficking all the harder to end. Jacob Soboroff, NBC News, Los Angeles.
Up next tonight, our story inspiring America, the women whose love of flying turned out to be so much more. Finally tonight, the remarkable story of one adopted pilot who found out that flying isn't just her passion, but that it runs in the family. Gotti Schwartz with our Inspiring America.
Catch a glimpse of these two walking through an airport.
I think the whole thing was like so much fun.
And you'd think, gotta be sisters, right? Sherry Ritkin, a captain for Spirit Airlines.
Very nice.
And Tammy Holloway, also a pilot and manager of United's Terminal 7 at LAX. But just wait till you hear their jet-setting twist.
So you never knew you had a sister?
Never knew until 2.5 years ago.
And you neither?
Both the parents went to the grave and said nothing.
But in 2019, all that changed with the help of a DNA test and a friend.
My friend called me up. She's like, "You're not going to believe this. You have a full sister. Your mom and dad got married 13 months after they gave birth to you. And then 11 years later, gave birth to my sister." And I said, "Well, where does she live?" "In L.A. In L.A., I'm flying there in 5 hours.
For years, you have crossed paths as sisters and just never known it.
Yeah, right. It gets crazier. Like, the more we've come to learn about each other, the more we've discovered that our universes get so close to colliding.
Even going through pictures for this story, Tammy spotted one of her college friends teaching her sister how to fly. But their biggest connection, their biological mother, Cindy, who also worked in the airline industry for 30 years.
I feel like her passing, she somehow said, "I'm not going to let them be without each other, and I'm going to make sure they find each other."
Definitely.
To then find out that you have this whole new space and this whole new person to come in and accept and love you. It's really special.
Last week, the sisters taking flight for the first time together, sharing their love of flying and a sisterhood that was always meant to be. Gotti Schwartz, NBC News, Los Angeles.
Isn't that something else? That's Nightly News for this Tuesday. Thank you for watching. I'm Lester Holt. Please take care of yourself and each other. Good night. Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.